What's up, everybody? Well, it's Agent Carpo here. Welcome to the shill zone. Start with a disclaimer. No, I'm not a shill. No, I'm not a paid disinformant. No, I'm not trying to cause trouble or, bring up any negative emotions by talking about things like the hollow moon or the illusory moon or reptilians. I won't get into some of the more realistic conspiracies, but some of them have some ground in reality, and therefore some of them don't. And I guess what inspired me to make this video was I got up this morning and I was, flipping through my, reading my comments, and I looked down through my page because I haven't done anything to my YouTube page. I don't really organize it or my playlists are a mess. I don't really do anything with it. So I flipped down my page to kind of see what I had in there. And one of my series, or one of my playlists, is the craziest theories on PooTube, is what I call it. And one of them is about reptilian shapeshifter police caught on camera, things that are really obviously to me just a joke. And one of them is the David Icke interview. It's 4 or 5 minutes long, and he's talking about why the moon is a hologram. And I've been laughing at this idea for years. And when I discuss this with people that believe it, they will say, well, you're just indoctrinated by society. You just haven't thought it through. You're just believing what you've been told, or that you just can't comprehend that something could be what you weren't told. And it's actually the complete opposite. I believed that the moon was hollow back in 1998. Okay, so it was almost 20 years ago that I was like, the moon's hollow, that it was brought in from another planet system. I was told, I read that it was an artificial body. And then later, years later, on the internet, it became the illusion that the sky's a projection, everything's an illusion. And after looking into this, I started to realize it's trust issues. People are so desperate to understand the world that once we start to actually understand it, it's too much for us. That may sound a little silly, but we become overwhelmed with the knowledge that we have, and it's easier to cast some of it off and pretend like it just isn't real, or something else that we can argue about, when we have absolutely no ample evidence to show that it's real, such as reptilians and this idea that the moon is a hologram. But years later, after reading about these things, and I started, I'd look at the moon and say, wow, is it really hollow? Are there really bases on the backside of the moon? And I'm not debating that there are or aren't. In fact, this is kind of the main point of really this video here, is to say that every story is partially true. Not every story, of course, but whenever there's a very complicated issue, such as the moon, let's say maybe it's not hollow, but maybe there are bases on the back of the moon. Or maybe it's not an illusion, but maybe, there could be this truth or that truth. There are a lot of people that believe we've never even been into space. There are people that believe that space doesn't even exist, that we're living in some sort of a capsule, like a test tube, and everything's we're just being fooled. Questions like that, they don't bring any type of comfort. They don't bring any understanding at all. All they do is ask yourself, who's running the test tube? Who's projecting the sky, and what's beyond it? In other words, sometimes you just got to break down and say, shit, things are the way they are. The world is what it is. A quantum physicist could argue, well, nothing's real. Everything's, until you look at it, nothing exists. Schrodinger's cat, but I tend to follow Occam's razor, the idea that, the most likely story is usually true. And it's been true throughout my life that most of the time when I find something that a few people believe, that are very adamant about, yet are very hostile in the way that they convey their message, I usually know that it stems from trust issues, or the person just doesn't know how to think realistically. And the human mind being just a, whatever it is, the human mind is just weak yet strong. It's easy for us to take it and turn it into something phenomenal, our essence, our consciousness, and be aware of everything, But it's also easy to just let it go and let others think for us, which is what I believe that the Hollow Moon crew and especially the illusion of the moon, or people thinking that it's not real, these people are the biggest followers there are, because and I've seen that. I read a few of the comments, which is what inspired me to make this, because somebody said, what a ridiculous idea, there's absolutely no evidence to this, and the burden of proof is on David Icke, who was making the claim. And somebody responded to them, why is the burden on him? The burden should be on, you to prove that the moon is real, and that just because you've been told something for so long doesn't make it true. I agree with that. But over and over, we have ample evidence that the moon is real. The moon pulls the tides. I remember seeing somebody ask, God, what was it, Bill O'Reilly about that, and I can't remember how it came into the conversation, but somebody asked Bill, well, then what moves the tides? And the question was just like went over his head. He didn't understand it. Many people don't understand how science works in nature, how the moon affects the tides, and it's just such a simple, obvious thing. As we get older, we start to learn these things, and then we get to a point where we feel like we've been lied to, and that's when it's a choice. This is where you have to make a choice. You find out that you've been lied to throughout history by leaders, politicians, companies, and advertisers, and we've been consistently bullshitted about everything by people who have vested interests in us being fooled. But my question would be, what is the vested interest of someone projecting a fake moon and pretending it to be real? Why project anything at all? And this is just one thought, you just have to think it through and be realistic, be rational, and look at the science. It's like when Stray Dog put up this video the other day about the flat earthers. I did one of those a while back too. I just found it such a preposterous notion that it wasn't even worth discussing. The idea that there's a flat earth. But there is a flat earth society out there, an entire group of people who are convinced that the earth is indeed flat, and they have an explanation for just about everything you can imagine. None of them make sense scientifically, but they're trying hard to make it fit. But the question is, even if you can make a flat earth model that completely fits within physics and science, does that make it true? No. A majority of the people know that it's round. In fact, this is one of those perfect examples. You look at everything else in the universe. What shape is it? It's a sphere. Sphere is, the natives understood circles. The Native Americans, all cultures throughout history understood circles, the circle, the cycle, and that a sphere is the perfect shape within itself. And why would anything be flat? I don't know. It's just a dumb. Maybe that doesn't make sense to some, but it's using common sense. And in today, we have to use common sense because there's so much bullshit out there, and it just frustrates me sometimes to see that people are just so gullible, and they fall for these truther channels, and then when somebody else comes in and tries to talk some sense into them, they tell the other people that they're the gullible ones, like, oh, you're just believing what you've been told. But meanwhile, these people are believing what they're being told by a guy in his damn basement who has absolutely nothing, no scientific background. A lot of them can't even spell correctly or write, showing that they really didn't have any schooling, which shows that they probably didn't go to college, so they probably don't have any real knowledge on these things. I'm not saying, let me go back for a minute, I'm not saying that you have to go to college to learn about these things. I didn't. But what I'm saying is that if you're not book smart, if you can't spell basic words, it means that you probably don't read basic words. And it means that you probably haven't picked up a lot of books. And if you have, and you're, let's say, you have great academic skills, you have great punctuation or grammar, as well as a good rounded education in science, and you still believe these things, I'd like to meet those people, the really well-educated people who actually believe that the moon is a hologram, to not just tell me you're a shill, you're a fool, but to say, here's the evidence to prove that it's true. This is where they're projecting this hologram of the moon from. And this is why people on the opposite side of the country still see the moon in the same place in the sky, instead of it being, say, 50,000 feet up, where one guy sees it here, and one guy's over here, and one guy's over here, and they're different places. It's just basic geometry. It's mathematics. It's like you cannot have a moon that close to the Earth, or a hologram, or whatever you want to call it. And so if I should finish up, I should say, why does it matter? Because people spend a lot of time on these things. They spend a lot of time trying to prove things that are just completely ridiculous. And they have that right, because they're humans. Each one of us is. But at the same time, we have a right to call bullshit on it. So the very only reason I make a video like this would be in hopes that someone who buys into that stuff could at least step back for a minute and see that you don't have to believe everything you're told, but you surely don't have to discount or deny everything you've been told either, because a lot of it is readily observable. So anyway, that's what I got. The video's getting awfully long, so I wish y'all well, and Agent